She entered determined to impress, but when the arrogant businessman asked her, the elevator doors slid open with a quiet metallic whisper, and in that small moment before stepping out, Maya Patel took a deep breath that felt heavier than it should have. She had rehearsed this day in her head for years. Every sleepless night. Every rejected internship. Every whisper that said people like you don't belong in rooms like this. Today she refused to believe those voices. She stepped into the marble lobby of Halstead Global Holdings, a building that didn't just scream power, it radiated it. Polished floors reflected towering glass walls. Men in tailored suits moved with purpose. Women in sleek heels carried tablets and confidence like armor. Maya adjusted the sleeve of her modest navy blazer. It was the nicest outfit she owned, bought after months of saving. Not designer. Not expensive. But clean, sharp, and filled with determination. Because today wasn't just her first day as a junior analyst. Today was the day she would prove everyone wrong. The receptionist barely glanced up when Maya approached the desk. Name? The woman asked flatly. Maya Patel. Junior analyst. First day. The woman typed slowly, eyes scanning the screen before lifting her gaze again. This time with a faint expression Maya recognized instantly. That subtle flicker of doubt. The silent question. Are you sure you're supposed to be here? Take the elevator to the 34th floor. Conference room C. No smile. No welcome. Maya nodded politely anyway. Because she had promised herself something long ago. She would never let someone else's coldness freeze her kindness. The dream that cost everything. 3 years earlier, Maya had been working night shifts at a grocery store while studying finance during the day. Her mother cleaned offices. Her father drove a taxi. Every success she chased felt like climbing a mountain barefoot. Her professors admired her grades but never recommended her for internships. Recruiters smiled politely and never called back. She learned early that talent alone wasn't always enough. You had to outwork doubt, outlast rejection, outshine expectations. And when the acceptance email from Halstead Global finally arrived, Maya cried for 20 minutes straight. Because Halstead Global wasn't just a company. It was the company. The dream company. The impossible company. And she had made it. The room that changed everything. Conference room C was already filled when Maya entered. 8 analysts sat around the long glass table. Conversations paused just long enough to notice her, then resumed quietly. She felt the familiar sensation of being the outsider. Different skin tone, different background, different story. She chose a seat at the end of the table and opened her notebook, determined not to let insecurity speak louder than ambition. At exactly 9 a.m. the door opened, and the room fell silent. Alexander Halstead walked in. CEO, founder, billionaire. The man who built Halstead Global from nothing into a financial empire worth billions. Tall, impeccably dressed, cold confidence in every step. His reputation was legendary. Brilliant, ruthless, unforgiving. A man who expected excellence and tolerated nothing less. His gaze swept across the table, sharp, analytical, calculating. Then it landed on Maya. And lingered. Just a second longer than it should have. He didn't smile. Didn't nod. Didn't welcome her. Instead, he opened the meeting without preamble. Today we evaluate market expansion strategies. I want bold ideas. Data-backed. No fluff. He paced slowly around the table, reviewing printed reports one by one. When he reached Maya, he stopped. His eyes moved from her report to her name, then back to her. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. And then he asked the question that made the room freeze. So tell me, Alexander said coolly, did you actually earn this position, or are you here because the company needed diversity? The air vanished from the room. Someone shifted in their seat. Someone coughed nervously. Nobody spoke. Maya felt her heartbeat in her ears. The question wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted. But it landed like a hammer. Because everyone understood what he really meant. He didn't think she belonged here. The moment that defined everything. For a split second, old memories flashed through Maya's mind. The recruiter who said she should consider more realistic companies. The professor who suggested she focus on safer careers. The hiring manager who praised her resume but chose someone else. Every doubt. Every dismissal. Every quiet rejection. All leading to this moment. She could stay silent. Look down. Let embarrassment swallow her voice. Or she could do what she had always done. Fight. Maya slowly closed her notebook and met Alexander Halstead's gaze. Her voice when she spoke was calm. Steady. Controlled. I earned it. The room went still again. Alexander tilted his head slightly, intrigued. Convince me. He pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat down. Every eye in the room turned toward her. This wasn't a question anymore. This was a test. And Maya realized something in that moment. Her career at Halstead Global would be decided in the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes that changed everything. Maya stood. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. You asked for bold ideas, she began. So I didn't prepare a safe presentation. She walked to the screen and connected her laptop. Graphs filled the display. Numbers. Projections. Risk models. I analyzed Halstead Global's expansion strategy in Southeast Asia. Your team rejected Vietnam last year due to perceived instability and infrastructure risks. Several analysts exchanged glances. Alexander's expression didn't change. Continue. Maya clicked to the next slide. Those projections were based on outdated infrastructure data and incomplete digital market trends. Vietnam's digital economy has grown 38% in the last year. Faster than any region you currently operate in. The room shifted. Now people were listening. Your competitors have already begun early investments. If Halstead Global enters the market within the next 18 months, projected ROI exceeds your European expansion by 12%. Silence. Not awkward silence. Focused silence. The kind that only appears when people realize something important is happening. Maya finished her final slide and turned to face the room. I don't expect you to believe I deserve this position because of my background, or my story, or anything else. She met Alexander's eyes again. I expect you to believe it because I came prepared. The room stayed silent for 3 long seconds. Then Alexander Halstead leaned back in his chair. And for the first time since entering the room, he smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, but with unmistakable interest. Impressive, he said quietly. Then his expression hardened again. But impressive isn't enough to survive here. He stood and buttoned his jacket. Meeting adjourned. Everyone began gathering their things, whispering quietly. Maya exhaled slowly, unsure whether she had just succeeded or made a powerful enemy. As she packed her laptop, a shadow fell across the table. She looked up. Alexander stood beside her. Close enough that his voice didn't need to be loud. You handled that well, he said. Then he added, voice lower. But don't get comfortable. He straightened. Starting tomorrow you'll work directly with me. And walked away without another word. Maya remained frozen in her chair. Heart racing. Mind spinning. Because everyone in the company knew one thing about working directly under Alexander Halstead. It was a career-making opportunity. Or a career-ending mistake. And she had just stepped straight into the fire. She entered determined to impress, but when the arrogant businessman asked her. The next morning Maya arrived early, so early the lobby lights still felt sleepy. She wanted time to breathe before walking into the lion's den again. But when she stepped onto the 34th floor, she realized something immediately. The directly with me assignment wasn't a compliment. It was surveillance. People glanced up as she walked by, then looked away too quickly. Conversations softened into murmurs. A few faces held sympathy, others held satisfaction. Like they were watching a show they were sure would end the same way. Alexander Halstead didn't mentor. He tested. He didn't teach. He exposed. And now Maya was the newest target. A sleek office assistant approached her with a tablet. Mr. Halstead wants you in his executive suite. Now. Maya nodded, keeping her face neutral, but inside her stomach tightened. The executive suite was on the top floor, a private level accessible only by a separate elevator. She'd seen it from afar like a myth. Glass walls, silent security, the kind of space where decisions were made that ruined careers without anyone raising their voice. The elevator doors opened to a quiet hallway where the air smelled expensive. And then she saw him. Alexander stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, looking out over the city like he owned it, because, in a way, he did. His voice was low, clipped, commanding. No. We don't compromise. If they can't deliver, we replace them. He ended the call without a goodbye and turned to her as if she'd been summoned by thought alone. You're late. Maya blinked. It's 7:52. You said. I didn't say anything, he cut in, eyes sharp. You were told to come. That means you come immediately. If you plan to work with me, you'll learn the difference between a schedule and a standard. Maya inhaled slowly, swallowing the instinct to argue. She'd learned something from years of being underestimated. Sometimes dignity meant not reacting. Understood, she said. Alexander studied her for a moment as if disappointed that she didn't crack. Good. He turned and walked toward a glass meeting table in the center of the suite. A thick folder sat there beside a laptop. Sit. Maya sat. Alexander slid the folder across to her. Read. Maya opened it, eyes scanning the first page. Her chest tightened. It was an internal audit report. Something confidential. And it wasn't small. It was a case. A major one. A corporate fraud investigation tied to Halstead's newest expansion initiative. The name at the top made her pause. Keller Dynamics. One of Halstead's biggest partners. Maya looked up. Why are you showing me this? Because I need analysis, Alexander said flatly. And because everyone else is too busy protecting relationships to tell the truth. Maya flipped through the documents. Numbers didn't just look wrong, they screamed wrong. Missing invoices. Rerouted payments. Shell accounts. Patterns disguised as coincidence. This is serious, she said carefully. Alexander leaned in slightly, his shadow darkening the pages. It's going to explode within 2 weeks, he said. If it explodes on my watch, shareholders panic. Our competitors pounce. People lose jobs. He paused, eyes narrowing. And I don't lose. Maya's fingers tightened around the folder. She understood what he wanted. He wanted her to find a way to fix this quietly. To bury it. To make it disappear without scandal. And suddenly the meaning of working directly with him became clear. This wasn't mentorship. It was moral warfare. The first trap. Alexander slid a pen toward her. Write your recommendation. What do we do? Maya stared at the pen like it was a weapon. Her mind raced. She could play safe and suggest internal containment. She could say what he wanted to hear. Or she could say what was true. She remembered her mother scrubbing office floors at midnight while executives laughed in boardrooms upstairs. She remembered her father's hands cracked from steering a taxi wheel for 12 hours straight. People like them didn't get second chances. People like Alexander always did. Maya placed the pen down. We report it. The silence that followed was so sharp it felt physical. Alexander's expression didn't change. But his eyes hardened. To whom? He asked. To compliance. To regulators if necessary, Maya said, voice steady. If Keller Dynamics is cooking their books and we're tied to them, we don't just risk reputation. We risk criminal liability. Alexander's mouth curled slightly, not quite a smile. And how long have you been here, Maya? 2 days. And you already believe you understand how this world works, he said quietly. Maya met his gaze. I understand enough to know that hiding this doesn't protect anyone. It protects Keller. And it protects whoever enabled it. Alexander leaned back, crossing his arms. For a moment, Maya thought she'd gone too far. Then he said something she didn't expect. Interesting. He tapped the table slowly. You're either brave or stupid. Maya didn't flinch. Alexander stood. Follow me. He walked out of the suite, not waiting to see if she followed, confident she would. Maya rose and followed him down the hall, past security, into a private conference room. Inside were 3 people already seated. A senior analyst named Brent Cross. A legal counsel named Dana Reed. And a man Maya recognized from company news, Victor Keller himself, CEO of Keller Dynamics. Maya stopped mid-step. Victor Keller looked up and smiled as if he was greeting staff at a hotel. Maya Patel, he said smoothly. Our new rising star. I've heard about your little moment yesterday. Maya's throat went dry. Alexander had brought her into a room with the very man under suspicion. This wasn't a test. This was a setup. Alexander sat at the head of the table. Maya has been reviewing the audit, he said. She has opinions. Victor's smile widened. Oh. He leaned forward. Tell me, Miss Patel, what do you think? Maya's mind spun. If she accused Keller directly, she would be crushed. If she stayed silent, she would betray her own integrity. This was how powerful men controlled people. Not with threats, but with impossible choices. Maya looked at Alexander, hoping, foolishly, for any sign this wasn't cruel. He gave none. So Maya turned back to Victor Keller and chose the only path she could live with. The numbers are inconsistent, she said evenly. There are patterns that suggest reporting errors or misallocation. I'd recommend a full forensic review before moving forward with the expansion. Victor's smile didn't move, but his eyes turned cold. Forensic review? He echoed, amused. You realize how expensive that is? Maya held her ground. Less expensive than a scandal. Victor laughed softly as if she told a joke. Then he looked at Alexander. Cute. You've hired someone very idealistic. Brent Cross smirked, enjoying it. Dana Reed shifted uncomfortably. Alexander didn't react. Victor turned back to Maya, still smiling. Let me give you advice, he said, voice smooth as oil. In business, idealism is like perfume. Smells nice. Doesn't feed anyone. Maya's jaw tightened. Victor continued, if you want to survive, you learn when to keep your mouth shut. Maya felt the room closing in. And then Victor Keller asked the question that made Maya's blood run cold. So tell me, he said casually, how did someone like you get into Halstead Global anyway? Scholarships? Diversity initiative? Or did you charm someone important? Brent chuckled. Dana looked down. Alexander stared at the table like it was none of his concern. Maya's face burned, not from embarrassment, from anger. That question wasn't curiosity. It was humiliation. And it was deliberate. Maya took a slow breath. She remembered every time she had been forced to swallow disrespect just to keep her job. And she remembered the promise she made to herself. Never again. She leaned forward slightly. I got in because I worked harder than you can imagine, she said, voice quiet but sharp. And because my qualifications were strong enough that even people who don't want someone like me here couldn't deny them. The room went still. Victor's smile faded into something darker. You should watch your tone, he said softly. Maya's heart pounded, but her voice didn't shake. No, she said. You should watch yours. Brent made a small sound of disbelief, like he couldn't believe she'd said that out loud. Victor stared at her. And then he smiled again, but this time it was a predator's smile. I see, he said. Alexander, you've given me a gift. Maya looked to Alexander again, expecting him to step in. You didn't? Victor stood, buttoning his jacket. Thank you for your time, he said smoothly. We'll revisit this after you've trained your new hire. He walked to the door, then paused, and delivered the threat like it was a compliment. Be careful, Miss Patel. People who talk like you don't last long in rooms like this. Then he left. The door clicked shut. Silence flooded the room. Maya's fingers trembled under the table, not because she was afraid of Victor Keller, because she suddenly realized the real danger was Alexander Halstead. Alexander finally spoke. That, he said calmly, was your first lesson. Maya swallowed. What lesson? Alexander's eyes met hers. Power doesn't shout, he said. Power smiles while it destroys you. He stood. And now you have a target on your back. Maya's voice came out low. You set me up. Alexander didn't deny it. I needed to know what you're made of, he said. Now I do. Maya stood too, anger rising. You could have warned me. Alexander stepped closer, his voice quiet, sharp. If I warn you, you're protected. His gaze didn't blink. And protected people never become dangerous. Maya felt something snap inside her, not fear. Resolve. Then maybe I don't want to become dangerous, she said. Alexander's eyes narrowed. You will, he said. If you want to stay here. Maya's hands clenched. What do you want from me? She demanded. Alexander studied her for a long moment. Then he said the words that changed everything. I want you, he said evenly, to find the truth, and I want you to survive long enough to use it. Maya stared at him. Why? She asked. Alexander's jaw tightened, something flickering across his face too fast to read. Then he answered quietly. Because Keller ruined someone I cared about once. Maya froze. For the first time, Alexander Halstead didn't look like a cold billionaire. He looked like a man carrying a wound. And Maya realized she didn't understand this story yet. Not even close. The attack begins. By afternoon, the whisper started. Maya walked into the cafeteria and conversation stopped. She passed a group of analysts and heard a whisper she wasn't meant to hear. She thinks she can talk to Victor Keller like that? She's going to get herself fired. Or worse. Her inbox filled with meeting invites, suddenly canceled. Access permissions removed. A report she needed locked behind authorization. By the end of the day, she couldn't even log into one of the databases required for her job. She marched to IT. The technician glanced at her screen and frowned. Your access was revoked by executive request. Maya's stomach dropped. By who? The technician hesitated, then looked away. I'm not allowed to say. Maya didn't need him to. She already knew. Victor Keller had started his retaliation. And he hadn't even waited 24 hours. The twist that hit like a truck. That night, Maya sat in her small apartment, laptop open, staring at the audit files she'd downloaded earlier. She should have been exhausted. But her instincts were screaming. Something in the numbers felt familiar. A pattern she had seen before. A trail she had chased once, long ago, while helping her father with taxes and bills. Maya cross-referenced one of Keller's shell companies. And her hands went cold. Because the registered address wasn't some corporate building. It was an old strip of property outside the city. A place she knew. A place that haunted her family. She checked again, thinking she'd made a mistake. But it was right there in black and white. The same address belonged to a development project that had forced dozens of families out of their homes 5 years ago. Including hers. Maya's breathing turned shallow. She clicked deeper. And found the name of the holding company tied to that eviction project. Keller Property Group. Her vision blurred. 5 years ago, her parents had lost their home in a brutal redevelopment deal. The landlord claimed it was legal. The papers were perfect. The eviction was immediate. Her father had cried that night for the first time in her memory. And now she was staring at the proof that Victor Keller's empire had been behind it. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Maya sat back, heart pounding. Because the arrogant businessman who humiliated her today was the same man who had destroyed her family's life years ago. And now she was standing inside his battlefield. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, Maya. This isn't your fight. Another buzz. A second message, colder. Or you'll end up like your parents did. Maya stared at the screen, blood turning to ice. Someone knew exactly who she was. Someone knew her past. And someone was watching her now. She entered determined to impress, but when the arrogant businessman asked her, Maya didn't sleep that night. The messages sat on her phone like silent threats breathing in the dark. Stop digging. You'll end up like your parents did. Every instinct screamed to step back. To play safe. To survive. But fear had ruled her life once already. When eviction notices replaced family photos on their walls, when moving boxes replaced childhood memories. She wasn't that powerless girl anymore. This time she had access. This time she had knowledge. This time she had nothing left to lose. By sunrise, Maya had made a decision. She was going to finish what she started. Even if it destroyed her career. The day everything turned hostile. The office atmosphere shifted overnight. It was subtle at first. No one said anything directly. But silence can be louder than insults. Her usual login access failed again. Her team stopped including her in email threads. Her desk had been moved, from the main analyst floor to a small workstation near the printers. The message was clear. She had been isolated. Punished. Brent Cross leaned against the desk across from hers, arms folded with a smug half-smile. Word travels fast, he said casually. You really embarrassed Victor Keller yesterday. Maya didn't look up from her laptop. I told the truth. Brent chuckled. That's cute. Truth doesn't matter here. Power does. He lowered his voice. People who threaten billion-dollar partnerships don't last long. Maya finally met his gaze. Good thing I'm not threatening it, she said calmly. Their fraud is. Brent's smile disappeared. You think you're some kind of hero? No, Maya replied. Just someone who doesn't like lies. Brent leaned closer. Then here's some truth for you, he whispered. Victor Keller can end your career with one phone call. He straightened, voice louder again. Good luck, Maya. He walked away laughing quietly. Maya watched him go, her pulse steady despite the tension rising inside her. For the first time since joining Halstead Global, she understood the real culture of the place. Not ambition. Not excellence. Fear. Alexander's unexpected move. At 10:03 a.m. her phone buzzed. Alexander Halstead, my office. No greeting. No context. Just command. When Maya entered the executive suite, she found Alexander standing by the window again, the city stretching endlessly beneath him. He didn't turn immediately. You received threats, he said. Maya froze. How do you know? I have security monitoring company networks, he replied. Your email and phone activity spiked at 2:14 a.m. He turned to face her. Show me the messages. Maya hesitated. Trust didn't come easily, especially not with him. But something in his expression felt different today. Less cold. More focused. She handed him her phone. Alexander read the text, jaw tightening slightly. They're sloppy, he muttered. What? Threats are more effective when they're vague. This is emotional intimidation. Which means Keller's nervous. Maya blinked. Nervous? Alexander handed the phone back. People with real power don't send threats. They send lawyers. He stepped closer. You're getting too close to something. Maya crossed her arms. You already knew Keller was dirty. Yes. Then why didn't you stop him before? Alexander's expression hardened. Because proving corruption at that level requires evidence strong enough to survive war. He paused. And now you may have found it. Maya stared at him. Why me? Alexander didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the table and opened a drawer. He pulled out an old newspaper clipping and slid it toward her. Maya picked it up. Her heart skipped. The headline read, "Local developer bankrupt after hostile buyout. Dozens lose homes." The photo beneath it showed a man Maya recognized instantly. Her father. Younger. Exhausted. Standing outside their old apartment building. Maya's hands began to tremble. "You knew," she whispered. Alexander nodded once. "I recognized the address the moment you mentioned Keller's shell company." Maya's voice shook. "You knew he destroyed my family?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Alexander's voice softened, just slightly. "Because anger clouds judgment. And I needed you focused." Maya stared at him, emotions colliding inside her chest. Rage. Confusion. Pain. "And what about the person you said Keller ruined?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "My sister." Silence fell like thunder. "She ran a small tech startup," he continued quietly. "Keller promised funding. Then sabotaged the deal and bought her company for pennies. She lost everything." He looked away toward the city. "She never recovered." Maya's anger softened into something heavier. Understanding. This wasn't just business for him either. This was war. The plan that changed everything. Alexander turned back, expression sharp again. "We stop him now." Maya blinked. "How?" Alexander slid a folder across the table. "Tomorrow is Halstead Global's quarterly board meeting. Keller will attend to finalize the expansion deal." Maya's pulse quickened. "The same deal based on fraudulent numbers." Alexander nodded. "We present the evidence. Publicly. In front of the board." Maya's eyes widened. "That will destroy the partnership." "Yes." "And Keller will retaliate." "Yes." "And shareholders will panic." Alexander held her gaze. For 48 hours. Maya realized what he meant. Short-term chaos. Long-term survival. Truth over convenience. "Why are you trusting me with this?" she asked. Alexander's voice was calm. "Because you don't scare easily." He paused. "And because you remind me of someone who deserved justice." Maya swallowed hard. Tomorrow would change everything. The public humiliation. The boardroom was enormous. Long polished table. Floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 executives seated in tailored perfection. Victor Keller sat near the center, relaxed and confident, smiling as he chatted with board members. Like a man who had already won. When Maya and Alexander entered together, the room quieted. Victor's smile widened. "Alexander?" he greeted warmly. "And Maya. Still here, I see." Alexander took his seat calmly. "Let's begin." The meeting moved through standard reports first. Financial updates. Market projections. Routine corporate theater. Then Alexander spoke. "There's one final item." Victor leaned back casually. "Oh." Alexander gestured toward Maya. "She has prepared a risk analysis for the Keller expansion." Every head turned toward her. Maya stood slowly, heart hammering but voice steady. She connected her laptop. The first slide appeared. Financial discrepancies. Missing funds. Shell companies. Murmurs rippled across the table. Victor's smile didn't fade, but his eyes hardened. "This is inappropriate," he said smoothly. "We can discuss this privately." Maya clicked the next slide. Eviction records. Development projects. Shell company ownership chains. Gasps echoed around the room. Victor stood abruptly. "This is defamation." Alexander spoke calmly. "Sit down, Victor." The command landed like thunder. Victor didn't move. The room held its breath. And for the first time since Maya met him, Victor Keller looked unsure. The instant karma moment. Maya displayed the final slide. A bank transfer trail. Illegal offshore accounts. Irrefutable proof. Silence swallowed the room. One board member spoke quietly. "Victor, is this true?" Victor's face turned pale. "This is fabricated." The doors opened suddenly. 2 federal investigators stepped inside. "Victor Keller," one said. "We need you to come with us." Shock exploded across the boardroom. Victor spun toward Alexander. "You planned this." Alexander's voice was ice. "You planned it first." Security escorted Victor out as executives stared in stunned silence. Maya stood frozen, heart pounding. It was over. Truth had won. Justice had arrived. And everyone in the room was looking at her differently now. Not with doubt. Not with dismissal. With respect. Alexander turned toward her. For the first time his voice held quiet pride. Well done. Maya exhaled shakily. But she didn't know yet. The biggest twist was still coming. She entered determined to impress, but when the arrogant businessman asked her, the boardroom remained frozen long after Victor Keller was escorted out. No one spoke. No one moved. It felt like the air itself had shifted. Just minutes ago, Maya had been the junior analyst no one trusted. The outsider. The risk. Now 12 executives were staring at her like she had just changed the trajectory of the company. One of the senior board members finally cleared his throat. Mr. Halstead, how long have you known? Alexander didn't hesitate. Long enough to know we needed proof strong enough to survive a courtroom. Another executive looked toward Maya. And she found it? Alexander's answer came without hesitation. She finished what I started. Maya felt heat rush to her face, not from embarrassment, from disbelief. Alexander Halstead was giving her credit. Publicly. In front of the board. And suddenly she realized something powerful. Respect wasn't given quietly. It was given loudly when it mattered most. The room that once judged her. After the meeting ended, executives gathered in small groups, voices low and urgent. The same people who had barely acknowledged Maya weeks ago now nodded politely as they passed her. One even stopped. Impressive work, Miss Patel. The words felt surreal. Because only days earlier she had been invisible. It was the first time Maya truly understood how quickly perception could change when truth became undeniable. Alexander approached her near the window overlooking the city. The same place where this journey had begun. You handled pressure well, he said calmly. Maya exhaled. I thought I was going to pass out. He almost smiled. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. She glanced at him. You're not very good at celebrating victories, are you? Alexander looked out over the skyline. Victories are temporary. Maya tilted her head. That sounds exhausting. For a moment, the billionaire didn't answer. Then he said quietly, it is. The truth about Alexander Halstead. They returned to his office in silence. Alexander poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. You deserve to know the rest, he said. Maya sat slowly. The rest. Alexander leaned against his desk. My sister, Elena, didn't just lose her company. Keller destroyed her reputation. He spread rumors that she committed financial fraud. Maya's chest tightened. She didn't, Alexander continued. But investors fled. Friends disappeared. She couldn't rebuild. His voice grew quieter. She believed the world saw her as a failure. Maya whispered, what happened to her? Alexander looked down at the glass in his hand. She stopped believing she deserved to try again. The weight of the sentence filled the room. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. That's why you built Halstead Global, she said softly. Alexander nodded once. I promised myself no one like Keller would ever ruin someone I cared about again. He met her gaze. And today, we kept that promise. Maya realized something then. This cold, intimidating man wasn't driven by power. He was driven by protection. By pain. By a promise he refused to break. The offer she never expected. Alexander walked around the desk and sat across from her. I want you to lead the new ethics and risk division. Maya blinked. What? You exposed the biggest threat this company has faced in years. You have integrity, courage, and the ability to survive pressure. He slid a folder toward her. Director position. Immediate promotion. Maya stared at the document. Her hands trembled slightly. This is huge. It's earned. She shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. 3 weeks ago, your receptionist barely looked at me. Alexander's voice softened. 3 weeks ago, they didn't know who you were. He paused. They do now. Tears blurred Maya's vision. Every night shift. Every rejection. Every sacrifice. All leading to this moment. The apology that meant everything. Maya closed the folder slowly. There's something I need to say, she said quietly. Alexander raised an eyebrow. You don't have to accept immediately. I'm not talking about the job. She took a breath. When you asked if I earned my position, it hurt. Alexander didn't interrupt. I know it was a test, she continued. But you confirmed every fear I've spent years fighting. Silence stretched between them. Then Alexander spoke. I was wrong. Maya blinked. The words were simple. But from a man like him, they carried enormous weight. I judged you before I knew you, he said. And you proved me wrong faster than anyone ever has. He met her eyes. I'm sorry. Maya felt something inside her loosen. Because sometimes justice wasn't just about winning battles. Sometimes it was about hearing the words you thought you'd never hear. The final board announcement. 2 weeks later, the entire company gathered in the atrium. Hundreds of employees stood shoulder to shoulder. Maya stood beside Alexander on the stage, heart racing. Alexander stepped to the microphone. Today marks a new chapter for Halstead Global, he began. His voice carried across the room effortlessly. We will build a company defined not only by success, but by integrity. He gestured toward Maya. I'm proud to introduce our new Director of Ethics and Risk, Maya Patel. Applause erupted. Loud, genuine, unstoppable. Maya stepped forward, stunned by the sound. This time when people looked at her, there was no doubt in their eyes. Only respect. The moment she finally understood. After the announcement, Maya stood alone in the atrium as employees congratulated her. She spotted the receptionist who had ignored her on her first day. The woman smiled warmly. Congratulations, Miss Patel. Maya smiled back. Not out of pride. Out of understanding. Because success hadn't changed who she was. It had revealed who she had always been. The final conversation. Later that evening, Maya stood beside Alexander on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city lights. You know, she said softly, you could have handled everything without me. Alexander shook his head. No. Why? He looked out at the skyline. Because power without integrity becomes the very thing it once fought against. He turned toward her. And because you reminded me what this company was supposed to stand for. Maya smiled. Respect. Alexander nodded. Respect. The moral that echoed beyond the story. The girl who once worked night shifts to afford textbooks now led one of the most important divisions in a billion-dollar company. The businessman who once doubted her now trusted her completely. And the man who tried to destroy families for profit lost everything in a single morning. Because in the end, the truth always finds its voice. And respect is never given to those who demand it. It's given to those who earn it.